Hello and welcome to Pandora FMS. In today's video, we'll look at the satellite server feature, how it is installed, how agents are created in a satellite server environment, and how basic monitoring is added. The satellite server is an enterprise feature, so if you don't have an enterprise license, it will not be available. Remember that you may request a free trial license to test all Pandora FMS enterprise features. To begin with, we will explain what satellite server is. It is not an ordinary server, but it could be considered a separate element that does not require connection to the database, which allows you to execute monitoring in remote or unreachable networks right through Pandora FMS server. This also helps in networks where you cannot install delegated software agents for monitoring and for them to be those who send the results to the main Pandora FMS server. To install it, you may do so both in Windows and in GNU Linux, the second option being the recommended one, and it has certain features that make it recommended in certain environments, such as the following ones. First, being able to run network tests, whether ICMP latency, SNMP version 1 and version 2 at a high frequency rate, and even SNMP version 3 if you configure the access credentials, although due to encryption it will make checks slower. It only sends data to the server every once in a while, which by default is 300 seconds, but it can perform checks at smaller intervals, such as every 30 seconds, so that when it detects changes, it notifies the server immediately without waiting for the set interval. These changes must be defined in advance if the module type is not _PROC Boolean value. It is also a standalone server, since it does not require connection to Pandora FMS database. It sends all data as XML using Pandora FMS data server feature as if it were a software agent. It has an auto-discovery system for SNMP and WMI, so that it creates the discover agents by IP, detects the dynamic elements such as network interfaces or storage, and monitors them automatically. In Windows systems, it detects disks, CPU, and memory. You may also create agents manually by creating an agent configuration file in the configuration directory of the satellite server. Since version 7.59, both the satellite server and the enterprise network server support IP version 6 in all its advanced features. It has the remote configuration feature similar to that of software agents, which allows to manage agents that belong to a satellite server from Pandora FMS' very own web interface. As for the installation, it is distributed in binary format packaged in tarball for GNU Linux or .exe for Windows. The operation of both versions is identical. In the case of Windows, it is installed as a service, and in the case of Linux, as a systems daemon. The configuration file and the specifications of both are identical. It should be noted that the Linux version depends on external packages, dependencies, that are specified in the corresponding section of the documentation that we will see below. For the purposes of this video, we'll proceed to perform the installation in a Rocky Linux 8 environment, which is the distribution that we recommend using for the whole Pandora FMS stock. Although the package is compatible with other out-of-the-box distributions such as Red Hat, Alma Linux, or Ubuntu, just to mention some of the most used. We will start by installing the fundamental dependencies for its operation: Perl, BRA, WMIC for version 7.61 and earlier, or Pandora WMIC, fping, mmap, and libnsl for version 7.62 onwards. BRA and WMIC, Pandora WMIC are attached to the installer, so we'll proceed to check whether the rest of the dependencies are installed, and if they're not, install them. Once the dependency installation is completed, proceed with the satellite server's installation. For that, you must have previously downloaded the container file of the satellite server in tarball format. Once you have it downloaded and located, execute the following command to retrieve the content: tar xzvf Pandora FMS _satellite_server -7.0 ng.767 x86 _64 tar dz. After finishing the command's execution, you will have a folder called satellite_server in the path where you execute it. Launch the command cd satellite_server to enter the folder, and then /satellite_server_installer -- to proceed with satellite's installation. Once installation is finished, edit the configuration file located at /etc/pandora/satellite_server.conf and modify the server_IP line to point to your Pandora FMS server. It should be noted that if you're in a version lower than 761, you must also manually enter your license in Pandora_license option. Starting from version 762, the satellite server is able to connect with the Pandora FMS server that you define in the IP server option and automatically activate the license it has configured without having to manually define it in the configuration file of the satellite itself. So in this video, it will not be necessary to configure any license since it makes use of this new activation mechanism. So just activate the service with /etc/init.d/satellite_server_d start. In the case of Windows systems, the installation consists of simply running the installer, following the steps of the installation wizard, and you may then activate the service and make the configurations you will see below, which will be exactly the same in Windows or Linux. Once the satellite is installed and configured to point to your main server of Pandora FMS, if everything went well, in a few minutes you will see it in the list of active servers from the web console, where you may make a series of configurations making use of the remote configuration feature that satellite servers have by default, which is the simplest and fastest way to do it. You may access the server list by clicking on the server icon located at the top right of the console or by going to Servers, Manage Servers. You may see how the satellite server appears listed with an icon of a satellite. On the right there are the following options: Edit, where you may modify the IP address of the satellite server, its description, port, etc. Manage satellite host, where you may enable, disable, delete, or add agents indicating the address and name of the agent to be created. Remote configuration, which will take you to the remote configuration tab through the standard editor with the visual configuration as we see on screen. If you wish, you may also make use of the remote configuration in the advanced editor, which reflects the configuration file as it really is in plain text for those who are already used to this method. And finally, delete, which will delete the satellite server from the server list. Among the most useful options of the satellite server, there is network discovery, so it is the first point that we will see. But before we will comment on the differences regarding the old remote configuration and the new visual editor. Previously, there was only the remote configuration from the file in plain text, but now there is the possibility of editing the server configuration using a more intuitive interface called Standard Editor, where you will see the field or parameter to configure and its values separated into two columns. If desired, you may configure it using the previous editor, which, as we mentioned, is a plain text editor of the configuration file. To continue, in this case, configuring agent creation through recon task using the remote configuration feature from Pandora FMS console, access the standard editor and edit the following parameters. First, recon_community in case of doing SNMP recon task. Then recon_enable set to 1 to enable recon task. Recon_interval to indicate the time interval where the network is scanned in seconds. Recon_mode, where you may indicate the types separated by commas. The options are SNMP, ICMP, and WMI. Recon_task, where you may indicate a list of network addresses where the scan will be performed, separated by commas. And finally, record_timing_template, where you will indicate a value from 1 to 5 to specify how aggressive Nmap will be. 1 will mean slower but not trustworthy, and 5 faster but less trustworthy. By default, it is set to 3. Once you've done all the desired modifications, save them, and since you're connected to the terminal of your satellite, restart the satellite service with /etc/init.d/satellite_server d-restart. Although this step is not necessary, since if you don't do anything in the next interval of 300 seconds by default, it will collect the data of the remote configuration automatically and will execute the tasks that you defined. In this case, if you want to force it to obtain the configuration, in order to not have to wait for the interval, restart the service manually, which is what we will do in this video, so we don't have to wait for the interval. Once you start it, it will begin scanning the network or networks indicated in the configuration file or the remote configuration interface, and when it finishes, you will have the devices discovered registered in your console. If you access Resources Manage Agents, you may see the agents created by the satellite server when it did the recon task, along with the corresponding models for monitoring. In addition, as we saw in the server view, there is the option to create agents manually through the console. To do this, go to Servers, Manage Servers, and click on Manage Satellite Hosts. To add a new agent, click on Add Host, indicate the device's IP address and the name that the agent will receive. It should be noted that you may export the list of agents created in CSV format, and that to delete the agents you just need to click on the trash can icon and confirm the deletion. It is also possible to add collections to satellite servers, which are resources used to deploy from Pandora FMS web console remotely, scripts, plugins, configuration, files, etc., to then be used in software agents, monitoring policies on agents and satellite servers. To do this, from the top where you are already managing satellite hosts, click on the collections icon located at the top right of the screen. All the collections available in the console will appear, and you must click plus to apply it to your satellite. Wait for the next interval or force it to see the changes reflected in the server configuration file. Recently, we added a feature that makes agent identification easier and helps you find out from which satellite server they were generated. It is now possible to see in a simple way from the view of the hosts or satellite agent which satellite it belongs to. To do this, you may go to Resources, Manage Agents, and click on View on any agent that has a satellite icon in the Operating System section. You will see the name of the satellite server next to the icon of the satellite, thus representing that this agent belongs to that satellite server. And finally, we should highlight that you may add modules to be created in the agent, such as those you see on the screen for ping and latency modules. To make a small demonstration, we will create a module to any satellite server. It should be noted that the syntax of satellite modules differs slightly from the syntax in common software agent modules, such as in the creation of SNMP modules. To proceed with module creation, go back to the Modules section within the agent, click Create above on the right, and fill in the required fields. For the purposes of this video, we will define a simple module and check its operation, so wait for the next interval for its execution or force it by restarting the satellite server. If desired, satellite agent support policy used to add monitoring and alerting in a centralized way. For more information about monitoring policies, we have videos on our channel on this topic, which explain in detail how they work. And that was it for today's video. Don't forget it, if you like the video, smile, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe. Any suggestions, questions, or ideas, please leave them in the comments below. Remember that if you're interested in trying Pandora FMS Enterprise, you may contact us to get a free 30-day trial. Thank you very much for your time, and we hope to see you in social media and in future learning videos.